The security camera recording from that Thursday afternoon never fails to crack me up whenever I replay it. A trio of middle-aged neighborhood busybodies dressed in identical polo shirts and khaki cargo shorts crept along my driveway as if they were pulling off a top-secret operation. They clutched clipboards, a hefty pair of bolt cutters, and something that looked suspiciously like a crowbar swaddled in layers of bubble wrap for reasons that defied logic. The ringleader, sporting a garish sun visor emblazoned with HOA President in shiny rhinestones, jabbed her finger toward my side gate like a general rallying soldiers to breach an enemy stronghold. These wannabe trespassers had no clue that my 12-year-old boy, Ethan, was home by himself that day. Nor did they realize Ethan had binge-watched Home Alone at least 47 times and had recently raided my stash of high-octane action flicks that I really ought to have stashed under better lock and key. I'm David Garrison, a solo father who committed the epic blunder of purchasing a home in Maple Ridge Estates roughly 18 months back. My real estate agent hyped it up as this idyllic, family-oriented haven boasting soaring property values and warm, welcoming residents. She conveniently skipped the part about the HOA operating like a pint-sized authoritarian regime under the iron fist of Patricia Dawson, who revered the neighborhood rulebook as if it were the 10 Commandments etched in stone. My initial offense in Patricia's book struck just 3 weeks after we'd unpacked, when I dared to slather my front door in a rich navy blue rather than sticking to one of the quartet of bland beige tones deemed the height of suburban elegance. Patricia Dawson was a 50-something powerhouse who flaunted HOA President as her top gig on LinkedIn, just ahead of her side hustles as a certified life coach and holistic wellness guru. She led a ragtag squad of clipboard-toting deputies dubbed the Compliance Subcommittee, though the rest of us whispered "Lawn Gestapo" when they weren't listening. Her top deputies included Harold Finch, a pensioned-off bean counter who whipped out a ruler every Sunday morning to gauge lawn blade lengths, and Dolores Manning, whose badge of honor was nailing a household with an $800 penalty for leaving their holiday lights twinkling. Until January to end, the feud brewing between Patricia and me had snowballed over months, fueled by ever more absurd infractions. It kicked off with the door hue, snowballed to the felony of bedding roses over the sanctioned decorative grasses, and peaked lately with the ultimate heresy of mounting a basketball hoop in my driveway, where it peaked from street view. But the situation derailed completely when Patricia insisted on barging inside my garage for an aesthetic harmony check against community norms. I turned her down with courtesy laced in steel, pointing out that the HOA charter granted her precisely zilch power to snoop through private interiors, at which her eyes turned to slit, and she hissed through gritted teeth that I'd live to rue, ignoring the board's fair-minded overtures. The next week, duty called me to a 3-day conference in Seattle, so I lined up for Ethan to bunk with his buddy Jackson, whose place was only 2 doors away. But my son, ever the fiercely independent scamp, flat out refused, swearing he was plenty mature to hold down the fort solo. We haggled until we struck a deal, daytime at home, but crashing at Jackson's after dark. I walked him through every camera angle, ran alarm drills together, and loaded his cell with every crisis contact imaginable. What slipped my radar was Ethan's covert project in the garage and emergency defense arsenal pieced together from idols in his blockbuster faves. Per the video timecodes, Patricia and her cronies rolled up precisely 1 hour and 14 minutes post my plane's departure. They buzzed the doorbell, then pounded with rising fury as Patricia bellowed at the entrance that HOA Statute 14C vested her with total rights to catalog inside-out rule breaks. Ethan, spying from the upper floor vantage, debriefed me later that he clocked it instantly as the kickoff to a hostile breach maneuver, as Patricia hammered away verbally at the entryway. Harold slunk to the house flank armed with bolt cutters, while Dolores snapped pics of my supposedly rogue mailbox. The chaos that ensued was straight-up 12-year-old brilliance fused with my own parental lapse in curbing his action hero obsession. Ethan had rigged his so-called perimeter barricades the night before. Harold fell first, fumbling to snip the side gate padlock. The instant his fingers grazed it, Ethan fired up the motion sensor sprinklers he jury-rigged to blast at head height, not turf level. Harold reeled back, foot skidding over the bar of soap Ethan had slyly planted on the path, then toppled into my recycle stacks amid a deafening crash. Alerted by the racket, Patricia stormed over to scope it out and planted her foot smack on the doormat Ethan had slathered in honey and veggie oil. Her fancy sandals betrayed her grip on the spot, propelling her into a rake propped up cartoon style. The handle whipped skyward and thwacked her brow, pitching her rearward into a seemingly harmless leaf heap which concealed a kiddie pool brimming with Ethan's homemade goop of maple syrup and chocolate syrup dialed for peak goo factor. Dolores, lunging to yank Patricia from the adhesive nightmare, set off the final wave of Ethan's booby trap barrage. Ethan had jury-rigged a party-grade confetti cannon to a nearly invisible tripwire strung across the garden walkway. Rather than ordinary paper shreds, he'd loaded it with a diabolical mix of eco-friendly glitter, plain flour, and judging by the scent cloud, an entire bottle of my expensive cologne. The blast hit Dolores square on, enveloping her head to toe in a shimmering, fragrant powder that promptly started clumping with the lingering sprinkler spray into a thick, pastel goo. By any sane standard, this would have been the cue for a full retreat. But Patricia Dawson had long ago parted ways with sanity. Drenched in chocolate and maple syrup, with autumn leaves plastered to her like some deranged forest creature, she barked orders for Harold and Dolores to rally behind her toward the rear entrance. Harold, sopping wet and nursing a spectacular purple welt on his leg from the bin collision, grudgingly unwrapped the bubble-swaddled crowbar. Patricia would later swear under oath that the padding was meant to avoid scratching property, an assertion the judge openly mocked, considering the trio was actively attempting unlawful entry. As they closed in on the back door, Finn unleashed his crowning achievement. He'd coded a custom routine into our smart home hub, which he proudly dubbed the Intruder lockdown sequence. The instant a hand grazed the knob, every indoor speaker erupted with ear-splitting police sirens cranked to 11. The exterior units kicked in with ferocious dog barks. Ethan had sourced online a convincing chorus of furious Rottweilers and Dobermans. Then came the Pi CDR assistants, a synthesized voice thundering across the cul-de-sac declaring, "Intruder alert activated. All cameras are recording in high definition. Emergency services have been dispatched automatically. Please face the nearest lens for your identification photo." The three aspiring burglars scattered in blind panic. Patricia lunged for escape, but her syrup-slick sandals betrayed her once more, forcing her to scramble on hands and knees across my grass to the curb. Harold made a desperate leap at the fence, only for his cargo shorts to snag on the pickets. He abandoned them altogether and sprinted away in his boxer briefs, desperately shielding himself with the clipboard. Dolores, now looking like the aftermath of a Michael's craft aisle detonation, attempted a composed speed walk retreat, but the glittering trail she shed marked her route clear as breadcrumbs straight to her doorstep 3 blocks over. Unbeknownst to the fleeing committee, Ethan hadn't dialed 911 quite yet. He prioritized evidence preservation like a seasoned pro. The boy systematically exported every camera feed, burned duplicates to a USB drive, and even compiled a montage set to epic orchestral swells before placing the call. When the patrol cars rolled up 15 minutes later, Ethan answered the door in the full suit and tie he'd donned for the occasion, presented the officers with a color-coded printout of the HOA Covenant's key trespass clauses highlighted in neon, and served them warm cookies courtesy of Jackson's mom. By the time my flight touched down in Seattle, my phone was in meltdown mode. 47 missed calls, 63 texts, and an inbox spiraling into chaos. The initial voicemail was the precinct confirming Ethan's safety and praising his thorough documentation of the attempted break-in. The next was Ethan himself, cool as ice, assuring me the home defense protocol had been executed flawlessly and there was zero cause for concern. The remaining 45 messages came from shocked neighbors, flustered board officials, and one frantic attorney for the association pleading for an urgent callback. The official report read like comedy gold. It listed Patricia Dawson, Harold Finch, and Dolores Manning as suspects in attempted breaking, criminal trespass, and attempted burglary. The responding officer dryly noted that the subjects appeared for questioning liberally coated in assorted syrups, flour, and glitter, which rather torpedoed their assertions of routine compliance duties. Patricia insisted her actions were sanctioned by covenant language, but once officers reviewed the actual document, she kept invoking, no provision for forcible entry materialized. The saga broke on the evening news under the banner, HOA president busted after 12-year-old thwarts invasion. The station filmed Ethan right on our driveway, permitted the sunglasses and leather jacket for full effect. When asked for a warning to future prowlers, my son stared straight into the lens and declared deadpan that this was his castle, and he'd protect it from any enemy, foreign or domestic. The clip exploded online within hours. Some enterprising editor overlaid blockbuster trailer audio, racking up millions of views. The hastily convened emergency HOA meeting 3 days later packed the clubhouse wall to wall. I'd cut my trip short and showed up flanked by counsel, though we hardly needed to speak. Residents rose one after another, recounting their own tales of Patricia's tyranny. The ballot to oust her from leadership wasn't remotely competitive. Of 123 ballots, 119 demanded immediate removal, 3 abstained, and a lone holdout, almost certainly Harold, voted nay. Upon hearing the tally, Patricia leaped up, jabbed a finger my direction, and shrieked that I'd masterminded the whole affair to ruin her. Security escorted her out amid flying clipboards when she refused to vacate peacefully. Criminal proceedings marched on, despite her frantic motions to dismiss. She cycled through 3 attorneys, each resigning after screening the irrefutable footage. The video proved devastating, particularly Harold's unmistakable crowbar work, while Patricia ranted about overriding private property for aesthetic unity. The prosecutor screened the reel in open court, prompting several jurors to stifle outright laughter at Harold's underwear dash. The trial lasted 3 days. Patricia drew convictions for criminal trespass and attempted burglary. Harold and Dolores accepted pleas to reduce trespass counts in return for testimony detailing how Patricia had persuaded them that her directives carried legal weight, visibly exasperated by the frivolous drain on judicial resources. The judge handed Patricia 6 months incarceration suspended for probation, plus 300 hours of community service expressly in non-HOA subdivisions, and a $10,000 penalty. As the sentence echoed through the courtroom, Patricia's complexion shifted to a furious burgundy that perfectly matched the forbidden door shade she'd once decreed was tanking neighborhood values. Before she slumped back into her seat, whispering about the gross miscarriage of justice.